Yeah, there was a world, and it was like new and brave. This book was written in 1930, or this book was published in 1932. Almost 100 years ago. On almost. 10 more years, and this book will be 100 years old. I'm so excited, Moose. So this book was published in 1932. It's set in a futuristic society, futuristic for 1932. It's about a society. It's set in a society that worships Ford Motors. It's set in the year 160 something AF, which stands for after Ford. So like 160 something. I think it's like 162 AF. I'm not sure. It's 160 something AF after Ford. They worship Ford Motors. Everything is made on an assembly line, from trucks to babies. Babies are made in test tubes on an assembly line. It's a real cool place. They do drugs and have sex with everybody. Everybody belongs to everybody else. There's a few characters that you guys should know. There's Bernard Marx and Lenina Crown. Those are two of the more prominent figures. Lenina really liked Bernard, even though he's weird and he probably had alcohol in his blood surrogate. But he's an alpha plus, and he's really interesting. This society has a caste system where like alpha, beta, etc., you know, all the way down to the epsilons and omegas, who had a lot of alcohol in their blood surrogate, if you know what I mean. The Roaring Twenties, but with a little bit of Ford in their lives. So yeah, everybody's happy. Everybody loves being who they are, whether they're an Omega or an Alpha Plus. Bernard Marx is an Alpha Plus. I believe Lenina is just an Alpha. And they both work at the baby bottling plant. And Lenina likes Bernard, and Bernard really likes Lenina. And they went on a date to a savage reservation. A savage reservation is a place that is surrounded by an electric fence where people who were not worth the... People who basically were left out of the development of the Brave New World. I believe in the book it explained the savages who live on the reservation were basically populations that weren't worth assimilating, you know, like it wasn't worth the effort to get them into the Brave New World, so they just put an electric fence around them, and they live their lives behind the electric fence. And sometimes, you know, you go on a date and you want to go to the tourist location on the Savage Reservation. And that's what Lenina and Bernard Marx did. They went on a date. They met the savages. They got to see like a dance or whatever, or a sacrifice, whatever you want to call it. And they met one savage in particular. His name is John. John Savage. And his father is Randy Savage. No, they met John the Savage. I don't know what his last name is. And his father is the director of the baby bottling plant where Bernard and Lenina work. it turns out that like 20 years ago, the director of the plant and his date went to the Savage Reservation, and his date like fell off a cliff and broke her leg and got lost. And he was just like, oh, that's a lot of work. I don't know if I can find her. So he just went home, and his date ended up living with the Savages for like 20 years until somebody finally came back and was like, holy shit, you do not fit in here. And it turns out she was pregnant at the time. So she was pregnant, and she fell off a cliff and then lived with the Savages for 20 years. Fell, pushed, who knows. And Lenina and Bernard, I don't know, when the director gave Bernard permission to go to it's the New Mexico reservation. The director gave Bernard permission to go there, and when he talked about it, it didn't sound like he knew what happened to his date. I would say girlfriend, but this society doesn't really have girlfriends. Everybody just kind of has sex whenever they want to, and they don't date, they don't get married, they don't have children. Children are strictly produced in factories. She didn't bang a Savage. It turns out that the father is the director. And you're not allowed to have kids. Like babies just don't happen in this world. They're made in a factory. So being a mother or a father is like a dirty word to these people, because it means like to them, the concept of impregnation is very, like, dirty. You know, like, if you say that that's my mom, people would, like, laugh at, like, you know, like, my mom. Your mom it's, like, a funny joke, you know? Like, nobody actually thinks that, like, anybody would have a baby. It's just, like, a joke or, like, a dirty joke. It's very taboo. And basically, Bernard met John, the Savage, and was like, he connected the dots, and then he brought the Savage straight back home to meet his father. He literally moried the director of the factory. He immediately called the president of the world and was like, something very interesting is going on. Do I have your permission to proceed? And the world director was like, what the fuck? Yeah, do it. And so then he went back home, and he walked up to the factory guy, and he was like, you are the father. And probably ruined that guy's life. And everybody laughed at him. So, okay, those are basically all the characters you need to know, I think. There's Bernard and Lenina, who went on a date, and then they met John, the Savage. Oh, and John's mom, she also came back. Her name's Linda. That's not really important. And then the last thing that's important is Lenina really likes the Savage now. She's, like, crazy about the Savage. She really liked Bernard, the Alpha Plus, because he was, like, weird and different and, like, mysterious, you know? Like, he like, didn't like society, and he's really interesting and smart, even though nobody else likes him. Lenina really liked Bernard, but then she met the Savage, and she was like, OMG. He's so hot. And that's where we are. That's where we are now, actually. John is exploring the brave new world. He even said in chapter 8, Oh, brave new world that has such people in it. Which I think is Shakespeare. The savage really likes Shakespeare because he found Shakespeare. He found a book. He likes reading books, but he's only read like 2 books in his life. And one of them was an instruction manual. And the second one was Shakespeare. And so John, I'll just say a little bit more about John, because I'm pretty sure we're going to read more about him. John was born on the reservation from his mother, Linda, who got trapped there. So both of John's parents are from outside the reservation, but he is a savage. He was raised there his whole life. He was born there. And now he's finally been brought home. And he's getting to experience the place that he was supposed to be. And so he's not really excuse my language, by the way. I do try to put up a content warning. I'm saying savage a lot, and I'm sorry. But 'tis what it is. So he's not really a savage, and he's not really, he doesn't belong in the society of either place. But he's never been to this new world, and so he's been brought home, quote, unquote, he's been brought home, and he's getting to experience the world that he was never born in. Although, he would have never been born if his mom hadn't fallen off of that cliff, he would have never been born. So that's weird. I kind of just realized that, they wouldn't have let her stay pregnant. And even she didn't know she was pregnant at the time. Because, they give you, they give you birth control with your fucking morning breakfast. That summary took way too long. Let's go. Chapter 13. Henry Foster. Yeah, they literally have a birth control utility belt that they wear at all times. They, what do they call it? I don't know. They call it a Malthusian belt, I think. And it's like a Batman utility belt that has, birth control in it. And it's, part of their fashion. And there's so much more. This book is really cool. It's really interesting. Aldous Huxley is amazing at world building. If you would like to read along, you can use !read along in the chat. And that will be a link to a PDF. Thank you, Prax. That's the PDF for the book. Just go to the index and click on the chapter. We're on chapter 13, and that'll take you right there. Also, all the previous chapters that I've read have been highlighted and put into a playlist on my Twitch channel. So if you're just getting here, you can also go back and just listen to the playlist of the whole book. Chapter 13. Henry Foster loomed up through the twilight of the embryo store. Like to come to a feelie this evening? Lenina shook her head without speaking. Going out with someone else? It interested him to know which of his friends was being had by which other. Is it Benito? He questioned. She shook her head again. Henry detected the weariness in those purple eyes, the pallor beneath the glaze of lupus, the sadness at the corners of the unsmiling crimson mouth. Oh, in the baby factory, the place where they work is the embryo store, and it's all lit with red lights. So that's why he's describing her, her lupus, her purple eyes, her crimson mouth, because they have red lights. Probably it's something to do with the embryos. Henry detected the weariness in those purple eyes, the pallor beneath that glaze of lupus, the sadness at the corners of the unsmiling crimson mouth. "You're not feeling ill, are you?" he asked, a trifle anxiously, afraid that she might be suffering from one of the few remaining infectious diseases. Yet once more Lenina shook her head. "Anyhow, you ought to go and see the doctor," said Henry. "A doctor a day keeps the jim-jams away," he added heartily, driving home this hypnopedic adage with a clap of the shoulder. "Perhaps you need sorry, I'm butchering this. A doctor a day keeps the jim-jams away," he added heartily, with a clap on the shoulder. "Perhaps you need a pregnancy substitute," he suggested. "Or else an extra strong VPS treatment. Sometimes, you know, the standard passion surrogate isn't enough." "Oh, for Ford's sake," said Lenina, breaking her stubborn silence. "Shut up." And she turned back to her neglected embryos. A VPS treatment indeed. She would have laughed if she hadn't been on the point of crying. As though she hadn't had enough VP of her own. As if she hadn't got enough VP of her own. She sighed profoundly as she refilled her syringe. "John," she murmured to herself. "John." Then, "My Ford," she wondered. "Have I given this one its sleeping sickness injection? Or haven't I?" She simply couldn't remember. In the end, she decided not to run the risk of letting it have a second dose, and moved on down the line to the next bottle. 22 years, 8 months, and 4 days from that moment, a promising young Alpha Minus administrator at Mwanza. Okay, I can't read this. This book is so hard to read. Okay, I promise it's worth it. I'm just gonna put okay. A VPS treatment indeed, as if she doesn't have enough VP of her own. Oh, John. My Ford, she wondered. Have I given this one its sleeping sickness injection, or haven't I? She simply couldn't remember. In the end, she decided not to run the risk of letting it have a second dose, and moved down the line to the next bottle. 22 years, 8 months, and 4 days from that moment, a promising young Alpha Minus administrator at Mwanza was to die of trypanosomiasis. An Alpha Minus administrator was to die of trypanosomiasis, the first case in over half a century. Sighing, Lenina went on with her work. An hour later, in the changing room, An hour later, in the changing room, Fanny was energetically protesting. The note in the thing says, "Such an important event handled by someone negligent." An astounding observation from our friend who owned this book before me. This is a used book, and it has writing all over it. Very astute writing. He's like, wow, Lenina should be fired. She's gonna lose her job. She just killed a man. Okay, an hour later, in the changing room, Fanny was energetically protesting. But it's absurd to let yourself get into a state like this. Simply absurd, she repeated. And what about a man? One man? But he's the one I want. As though there weren't millions of other men in the world. But I don't want them. How can you know till you've tried? I have tried. But how many? Asked Fanny, shrugging her shoulders contemptuously. 1 or 2? Dozens. But, shaking her head, it wasn't any good, she added. Well, you must persevere, said Fanny sententiously, but it was obvious that her confidence in her own prescriptions had been shaken. Nothing can be achieved without perseverance. But meanwhile, don't think of him. I can't help it. Take Soma then. I do. Well, go on. But in the intervals, I still like him. I shall always like him. Well, if that's the case, said Fanny with decision, why don't you just go and take him? Whether he wants it or no. But if you knew how terribly queer he is, or if you knew how terribly queer he was, all the more reason for taking a firm line. Well, it's all very well to say that, Fanny. Don't stand any nonsense. Act. Fanny's voice was a trumpet. She might have been a YWFA lecturer giving an evening talk to bleh. But if you knew how terribly queer he was, I need like a voice for Fanny. I don't know what I should do. She should sound like annoying, right? Why don't you just go and take him, whether he wants it or no? But if you knew how terribly queer he was, all the more reason for taking a firm line. It's all very well to say that. Don't stand any nonsense. Act. Fanny's voice was a trumpet. She might have been a YWFA lecturer giving an evening talk to adolescent beta minuses. Yes, act. At once. Do it now. I'd be scared, said Lenina. Well, you've only got to take 1/2 gram of Soma first. And now I'm going to have my bath. She marched off, trailing her towel. That means happily married, not homo. No, queer means weird. You're thinking of gay. Gay used to mean happy. When she says that he's queer, it means he's very weird. And the reason that she says that he's weird is because when she tried to like come on to him, he like pushed her away. Even though he likes her. I think she tried to have sex with him and he like started quoting Shakespeare. as one does. The bell rang, and the savage, who was impatiently hoping that Helmholtz would come that afternoon, for having at last made up his mind to talk to Helmholtz about Lenina. He could not bear to postpone his confidence a moment longer, jumped up and ran to the door. "I had a premonition it was you, Helmholtz," he shouted as he opened the door. On the threshold, in a white acetate satin sailor suit, and with a round white cap rakishly tilted over her left ear, stood Lenina. "Oh," said the savage, as though someone had struck him with a heavy blow. 0.5 grams had been enough to make Lenina forget her fears and embarrassment. "Hello, John," she said, smiling, and walked past him into the room. Automatically, he closed the door and followed her. Lenina sat down. There was a long silence. "You don't seem very happy to see me, John," she said at last. "Not glad?" The savage looked at her reproachfully, then suddenly fell to his knees before her, taking Lenina's hand, reverently kissing it. "Not glad? Oh, if only you knew," he whispered, and venturing to raise his eyes to her face. "Admired, Lenina?" he went on. "Indeed, the top of admiration. Worth what's dearest in the world." She smiled at him with a luscious tenderness. "Oh, you so perfect." She was leaning towards him with parted lips. "So perfect and so peerless are created." Nearer and nearer. "Of every creature's best." Still nearer. Okay, wait, I thought Lenina said, "Oh, you so perfect," but no. It was John. I'm sorry. Sorry for the confusion. "Admired, Lenina. Indeed, the top of admiration. Worth what's dearest in the world." She smiled at him with a luscious tenderness. "Oh, you so perfect." She was leaning towards him with parted lips. "So perfect and peerless are created. Nearer and nearer. So perfect and so of every creature's best. Still nearer." The savage suddenly scrambled to his feet. "That's why," he said, speaking with an averted face. "I wanted to do something first. I mean, to show I was worthy of you. Not that I could ever really be that. But at any rate, to show that I wasn't absolutely unworthy, I wanted to do something." "Why should you think it necessary?" Lenina began, but left the sentence unfinished. There was a note of irritation in her voice. When one has leant forward, nearer and nearer with parted lips, only to find oneself quite suddenly, as a clumsy oaf, scrambles to his feet, leaning towards nothing at all. Well, there is a reason, even with 0.5 grams of soma circulating in one's bloodstream, of a genuine reason for annoyance. Why would you have to do something? At Malpai, the savage was incoherently mumbling. You had to bring her the skin of a mountain lion. I mean, if you wanted to marry someone, or else a wolf. There aren't any lions in England, Lenina almost snapped. And even if there were, the savage added, with a sudden contemptuous resentment, people would kill them out of helicopters. I suppose. With, like, poison gas or something. I wouldn't do that, Lenina. He squared his shoulders. He ventured to look at her, and was met with a stare of annoyed incomprehension. Confused, "I'll do anything," he went on, more and more incoherently. "I'd do anything you'd tell me to. There be some sports are painful, you know, but their labor delight in them sets off. That's what I feel. I mean, I'd sweep the floor if you wanted." "But we've got vacuum cleaners here," said Lenina in bewilderment. "It isn't necessary." "No, of course it isn't necessary. But some kinds of baseness are nobly undergone. I'd like to undergo something nobly. Don't you see? But if there are vacuum cleaners, that's not the point. And epsilon semi-morons to work them," she went on. "Well, really, why?" "Why? But for you. For you. Just to show that I..." "And what on earth have vacuum cleaners got to do with lions?" To show how much. Or what do lions have to do with being glad to see me?" She was getting more and more exasperated. "How much I love you, Lenina," he brought out almost desperately. An emblem of the inner tide, of startled elation, the blood rushed up in Lenina's cheeks. "Do you mean it, John?" "But I hadn't meant to say so," cried the savage, clasping his hands in a kind of agony. "Not until... Listen, Lenina. In Malpai, people get married." "Get what?" The irritation had begun to creep back into her voice. What was he talking about now? "For always. They make a promise to live together for always." "What a horrible idea!" Lenina was genuinely shocked. "Outliving beauties outward, with a mind that doth renew swifter than blood decays." "What?" "It's like that in Shakespeare, too. If thou dost break her virgin knot before all sanctimonious ceremonies, may with full and holy rite..." "For Ford's sake, John, talk sense. I can't understand a word you say. First it's vacuum cleaners, then it's knots. You're driving me crazy." She jumped up, and as though afraid he might run away from her physically, as well as with his mind, caught him by the wrist. "Answer me this question. Do you really like me, or don't you?" There was a moment's silence, then in a very low voice, "I love you more than anything in the world," he said. "Then why on earth didn't you say so?" she cried. and so intense was her exasperation that she drove her sharp nails into the skin of his wrist. Instead of driveling away about knots and vacuum cleaners and lions and making me miserable for weeks and weeks, she released his hand and flung it angrily away from her. "If I didn't like you so much," she said, "I'd be furious with you." And suddenly, her arms were round his neck. He felt her soft lips on his own. So deliciously soft, so warm and electric, that inevitably he found himself thinking of the embraces in 3 Weeks in a Helicopter, which was a movie, or a feely, as they call them. He found himself thinking of the embraces in 3 Weeks in a Helicopter. Oh, the stereoscopic blonde. And the more than real blackamoor. Horror, horror, horror. He tried to disengage himself, but Lenina tightened her embrace. "Why didn't you say so?" she whispered, drawing back her face to look at him. Her eyes were tenderly reproachful. "The murkiest den, the most opportune place." The voice of conscience thundered poetically. "The strongest suggestion our worser genius can shall never melt mine honor into lust. Never, never," he resolved. "You silly boy," she was saying. "I want you so much. And if you want me too, why didn't you?" "But Lenina," he began protesting, and as she immediately untwined her arms, as she stepped away from him, he thought for a moment that she had taken his unspoken hint. But when she unbuckled her white patent cartridge belt and hung it carefully over the back of the chair, he began to suspect that he had been mistaken. He began to suspect he may have been mistaken. "Lenina," he repeated apprehensively. She put her hand to her neck and gave a long vertical pull. Her white sailor's blouse was ripped to the hem. Suspicion condensed into a too solid certainty. "Lenina, what are you doing?" "Zip, zip." Her answer was wordless. She stepped out of her bell-bottomed trousers. Her zippy kmicknicks were pale as shell pink. Oh God, her zippy kmicknicks were a pale shell pink. The Ark Community Songster's golden tea dangled at her breast. For those milk paps that through the window bars bore at men's eyes, the singing, thundering, magical words made her seem doubly dangerous, doubly alluring. Soft, but how piercing. Boring and drilling into reason, tunneling through resolution. The strongest oaths are straw to the fire in the blood. Be more abstemious, or else. Zip. The rounded pinkness fell apart like a neatly divided apple. A wriggle of the arms, a lifting first of the right foot, then the left. The zippy kmicknicks were lying, lifeless, and as though deflated on the floor. Still wearing her shoes and socks, her rakishly tilted round white cap, she advanced towards him. Darling, darling, if only you'd said before. She held out her arms. But instead of also saying, darling, and holding out his arms, the savage retreated in terror, flapping his hands at her as though he were trying to scare away some intruding and dangerous animal. 4 backward steps, and he was brought to bay against the wall. Sweet, said Lenina, and laying her hands on his shoulders, pressed herself against him. Put your arms around me, she commanded. Hug me till you drug me, honey. She, too, had poetry at her command. New words that sang, and were spells and beat drums. Kiss me. She closed her eyes. She let her voice slink to a sleepy murmur. Kiss me till I'm in a coma. Hug me, honey, snugly. The savage caught her by the wrists, tore her hands from his shoulders, thrust her roughly away at arm's length. Ow, you're hurting me. Oh. She was suddenly silent. Terror had made her forget the pain. Opening her eyes, she had seen his face. No, not his face. A ferocious stranger's, pale, distorted, twitching with some insane, inexplicable fury. Aghast, but what is it, John? She whispered. He did not answer, but only stared into her face with those mad eyes. The hands that held her wrists were trembling. He breathed deeply and regularly. Faint, almost to imperceptibility. But appalling, she suddenly heard the grinding of his teeth. What is it? She almost screamed. As though awakened by her cry, he caught her by the shoulders and shook her. Whore! He shouted. Whore! Impudent strumpet! Oh, don't! Don't! She protested in a voice made grotesquely tremulous by his shaking. Whore! Please! Damned whore! A gram is better, she began. The savage pushed her away with such force that she staggered and fell. I just killed Melissa. He pushed her with such force that she staggered and fell. Go, he shouted, standing over her menacingly. Go. Get out of my sight, or I'll kill you. He clenched his fists. Lenina raised her arm to cover her face. No, please, don't, John. Hurry up, quick. One arm still raised, and following his every movement with a terrified eye, she scrambled to her feet, and still crouching, still covering her head, made a dash for the bathroom. The noise of that prodigious slap by which her departure was accelerated was like a pistol shot. He slapped her. Oh my God, I was wondering, is that supposed to be like the door slamming? Okay, the noise of that prodigious slap by which her departure was accelerated was like a pistol shot. Ow! Ow! Lenina bounded forward. Safely locked into the bathroom, she had leisure to take stock of her injuries. Standing with her back to the mirror, she twisted her head. Looking over her left shoulder, she could see the imprint of an open hand, standing out distinct and crimson on the pearly flesh. Gingerly, she rubbed the wounded spot. Outside in the other room, the savage was striding up and down, marching to the drums and music of magical words. The wren ghosts toot, and the small gilded fly does lecher in my sight. Maddeningly they rumbled in his ears. The fitchew nor the soiled horse goes toot without a more righteous appetite. Down from the waist they are centaurs, the women all above. But to the girdle do the goods inherit. Beneath is all the fiends. There's hell, there's darkness, there is the sulphurous pit, burning, scalding, stench, consumption. Fie, 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 pa. Give me an ounce of civet, good apothecary, to sweeten my imagination. John, ventured a small, ingratiating voice from the bathroom. John! O thou weed, who are so lovely, fair, and smell'st so sweet, that the senses ache at thee, was this most goodly book made to write whore upon? Heaven stops the nose at it. But her perfume still hung around him. His jacket was white with the powder that had scented her velvety body. Impudent strumpet, impudent strumpet, impudent strumpet. The inexorable rhythm beat itself out. Impudent. John, do you think I might have my clothes? He picked up the bell-bottomed trouser, the blouse, the zippy kamikniks. Open, he ordered, kicking the door. No, I won't. The voice was frightened and defiant. Well, how do you expect me to give them to you? Push them through the ventilator over the door. He did what she suggested and returned to his uneasy pacing of the room. Impudent strumpet, impudent strumpet. The devil luxury with his fat rump and potato finger. John, he would not answer. Fat rump and potato finger. John. What is it? He asked gruffly. I wondered if you'd mind giving me my Malthusian belt. Lenina sat, listening to the footsteps in the other room, wondering as she listened how long he was likely to go tramping up and down like that. Whether she would have to wait until he left the flat, or if it would be safe after allowing his madness a reasonable time to absolve. to subside. Would it be safe to open the bathroom door and make a dash for it? She was interrupted, in the midst of these uneasy speculations, by the sound of the telephone bell ringing in the other room. Abruptly, the tramping ceased. She heard the voice of the savage parleying with silence. Hello? ... Yes. ... If I do not usurp myself, I am... ... Yes, didn't you hear me say so? Mr. Savage speaking. ... What? Who's ill? Of course it interests me. ... But is it serious? Is she really bad? I'll go at once. ... Not in her rooms anymore? Where has she been taken? ... Oh my God. What's the address? ... 3 Park Lane? Is that it? 3? Thanks. Lenina heard the click of the replaced receiver, then hurrying steps. A door slammed. There was silence. Was he really gone? With an infinity of precautions, she opened the door 1/4 of an inch, peeped through the crack, was encouraged by the view of emptiness, opened a little further, and put her whole head out. Finally tiptoed into the room, stood for a few seconds with a strongly beating heart, listening, then darted to the front door, opened, slipped through, slammed, ran. It was not till she was in the lift and actually dropping down the well that she began to feel herself secure. I did a really bad job of reading that, but that was chapter 13. I tried, as usual. Chapter 13. And after a brief bathroom break, I will do chapter 14, which is a little bit shorter than... It's a short chapter, and then we'll be done for today. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Aw. I'm always harder on myself than you guys are, so thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Impudent strumpets. Sorry. Okay, ever since I read this book the first time, sometimes, like, the impudent strumpet just, like, comes into my mind sometimes. And I have nobody to say it to. So I'm glad we all know about the impudent strumpet now. Anonymous, thank you for $100. That chapter went from hilarious to harrowing real quick. Real well read, though. Thank you. I can't, yeah. Impudent strumpet. Whore. If I knew what chapter that was, I don't, like, review usually. Ever. I usually don't review the chapter before I read it, but if I knew that was happening today, I would have mentally prepared for it. I've been waiting forever to read that chapter, and now I just, like, read it. Now it's over. Whore! Whore! Impudent strumpet! Okay, but yeah, I wish I'd prepared for that moment.